Not done. Next, we have a special council meeting that we will now convene. The purpose of, and again, all of our council is present. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and the proposed fiscal year 2019-20 secondary property tax levy. So I declare the public hearing open. Ms. Mickelson, has anyone requested to speak on this item? Okay. Thank you. I do have one card that is requested to speak, and this is from Mr. Burl Farnsworth. Mr. Farnsworth.
Mayor and Council, I'm opposed to the 2019-20 budget because it includes an item that was not approved by the citizens of Mesa. In fact, the item in the budget was specifically opposed by the vote of almost 84,000 citizens. That item is the ASU building that you continue to move forward against the voice of the people. Since you've disregarded the voice of the people in this matter, I think it only fair and reasonable for this council to produce the file that contains the financial workup that proves that in February of 2018, a thorough study and evaluation of the city's finances showed that the necessary funds to amortize the payment needed was available without risk to any of the current service of the citizens of Mesa. Reminding the mayor and all who supported him, I will not be for this ASU project if there has to be a tax increase or utility rate increase on the citizens of Mesa. Why then did the council vote to raise the water rates and then put a tax increase on the ballot for public safety, which did pass, further solidifying the argument that 84,000 voters turned down the ASU building. Number three, this council needs to make an open book of the actual cost of this ASU project, the value of the land, the lack of parking, the renovation of the adjacent building and the park to be built as part of the commitment to ASU, and other hidden costs that the citizens will be taxed to pay. I project that with interest, all these hidden costs, the total will be closer to $120 million, not the 63.5. Also, a complete list of all the businesses that have decided to come to downtown that you have assured the public are coming, with your businesses just lining up with their checkbooks, waiting for us to bring ASU to downtown. Funding was never going to be available without a tax increase, in part proven by some of the decisions recently made by pillaging the city assets to pay for this building that the citizens voted down. Postponing the discussion on the eventual water rate increase until winter, when the citizens will perhaps not notice the increase like they would in the summer months. Nice try, but we'll let them know. I'm still waiting for the apology due me. Since Mr. Brady said that it had been extended, it surely should have arrived by now. It's not arrived. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, does anyone on, Ms. Mickelson, do we have any other requests to speak from the public? Thank you. Council, anyone wish to speak on this item? Jeremy.
I'm opposing the budget this year, and I just want to outline the few reasons why. The budget continues to be structurally imbalanced, which obviously isn't sustainable. When you're taking money from your reserve funds in order to sustain your budget. The part that I'm most disappointed in this year's budget is how we've marginalized our CIP program and turned it into what we call a wish list of projects, as opposed to how the charter specifically outlines what the CIP process should be. So I'm going to take a minute to say what the charter says, and it says, prior to the beginning of each fiscal year, the city manager shall prepare and submit to council a 5-year capital improvement program. The capital improvement program shall include a clear general summary of its contents, a list of all capital improvements which are proposed to be undertaken in the next 5 years, with appropriate supporting information as to the necessity of such improvements. We haven't heard that. the cost estimates, method of financing, and recommended time schedules for each such improvement. Again, I believe that our CIP process has been completely ruined, and we no longer have to look at the next 5 years and how we're going to fund our city based on the way that we've decided to change that this year. The PSPRS amortization costs us millions of dollars to switch that from 20 to 25 years. We continue with that policy, which if we're doing well, we should be paying down that additional debt. This year, we've eliminated the effect of our budget on the utility rate payer. I don't know how anybody can approve a budget when they have no idea how it's going to impact the utility rate payers. The last part is the extraction of money from our utilities, which includes but isn't unlimited to the Economic Investment Fund and how we're shifting another $8.5 million from our enterprise fund over to our general fund. So inevitably this will lead to higher utility rates, and I don't agree with this process. So for those reasons, I won't be voting for the budget this year.
Thank you, Mr. Whittaker. Mr. Thompson.
I was really going back and forth on whether I wanted to vote to approve this budget or not. Ultimately, I will. But I think as a council, we're letting down our citizens when it comes to funding our PD properly. I think our police department is underemployed. I think our citizens see that. They realize that. Certainly in my district, they're aware of that. It's a shame that as a council, we can't do a better job on our budget to ensure that our police department is properly funded. We're down in detectives, we're down in special units such as the heat group, and we're down in patrol. Anytime we have one single beat that has one officer on it, you're asking for trouble. And we have that in numerous places. I know specifically on beat 77 in my district, it's one of the largest beats, and we have one officer patrolling that beat. We should be ashamed of ourselves as city council that we allow that to continue to happen. Like I said, I'll vote for this budget, but I'm hoping next year that we can do a lot better. We're not keeping pace with our growth of the city. Adding 15 officers a year is not keeping pace when we're adding 50,000 citizens. So we have to do a better job, and I'm hopeful that this council and our manager will do justice for our citizens next year and ensure that we're properly funded in PD and that we have the people in the police department to ensure the safety of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Council, other comments? I think Mr. Thompson brings up a point that we ought to discuss, and this is a funding of additional police officers for our police department is a topic that we have been talking about for a year or more, and that prompted us to go to the voters this last November asking for a 1/4-cent sales tax increase so that we could hire more police officers specifically. So Mr. Brady, could you perhaps respond to, is the problem of staffing in our police department, if there is one, is that tied to a lack of funds, or are there other structural things that need to be done so that we can, and just to remind us, I'm under the impression that we're adding 25 additional positions to the police department, 17 of which are sworn officers. That's in addition to attrition.
Right. So, Mayor, thank you. And I think it goes back to an earlier point that was made about that funds that have for the last 70 years been transferred from the enterprise to the general fund, and it's being done for public safety purposes. And so, yes, the citizens of Mesa, through their utilities, do help fund public safety as a priority for the city, both police and fire. And then this year's budget, as you mentioned, Mayor, we are going to have 17 sworn officers that are budgeted with another 12 civilians, and that's all sources of funding. But our challenge right now, and we're going to be continue to work with the police department, is not a funding issue. We're not running out of funding for the police department in positions and hiring positions. We need to continue to work, especially with the idea that we're going to keep adding more additional new positions into the police department for at least the next 3 to 4 years. And the challenge we have is getting enough cadets, officers through the academy to keep up with both the attrition as well as now, not only that, but the addition of officers. So we really need to have the chief and his staff work on a plan that's going to show us how they're going to be able to move and get more cadets through, because then I think that helps address some of the concerns that Councilmember Thompson has, not necessarily from a financial standpoint, but really just a matter of processing and making sure we're getting the labor pools available to get onto the streets. And so we're below the number that's authorized because we're not getting enough of the cadets through, or running enough academies, I guess, and getting enough officers out on the street. So I think we're committed to, maybe between now and the next time we meet, is really come up with a plan to be able to, the funding's been made available, thank you to the voters of Mesa. Now we've got to get the officers out on the street. And so that's really our next focus, is so that, as Councilmember Thompson says, we can get more officers out where they need to be, so that we can keep up with both growth and as well as just the frequency and keeping our crime rate low.
Thank you, and I guess that was my point. I agree with Mr. Thompson that we need to, this needs to be a priority, the additional the police officers. And again, just to make sure we're clear on this, we're adding 25 additional staff to the police department. That's above the current staffing levels. Those are 25 new positions, 17 of which are, well, actually 29, excuse me, 17 of which are sworn officers.
Correct.
And my understanding is that the staffing issue is not tied to a lack of funding. It's that we are at capacity right now in our ability to recruit and train police officers. So we need to find ways to increase our capacity.
We need to move that capacity up. Yeah, I don't know if whatever that takes. So yeah, we need to work with the chief's office to process more cadets. So we're not having a problem that I'm aware of at the end of the year of not having the funding available to bring those officers on. It's getting those officers trained and on the street. That's what we've got to work on.
So the word to help get out is that we are hiring as many as we can possibly recruit and train at this point, and that will be the case for the next several years.
Yeah.
And we're looking for ways to increase that capacity.
Increase our capacity. We need to do that in order to keep up, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
And one other as well is to ensure that the quality of our officers is kept at the standard that it is today.
Yes, we've had that
'Cause I
conversation.
want to make sure, because we have a lot of officers in
Yeah.
in attendance today. And,
Sure.
And we don't
We don't want to lower our standards. We just want more
of
of them, more of the high quality. Absolutely. We get it.
Okay. Thank you. We are, just to remind everyone where we're at, we're still in the midst of our public hearing on this item. Any additional comments from councils on this agenda item?
I'd just like to make one comment. I am in support of, our needs of the police, and I'm on the Arizona League for Public Safety, and we had a meeting last week, and it seems like there's a huge shortage in recruiting of officers statewide. But anyway, I just wanted to bring to comment is that we did approve the proposed budget for public safety as it was brought to us. We didn't pull back on that funding. There's nothing at council that we are fully funding the proposed budget from the police department. So I think we're all trying our best with the sales tax increase and improving funding and realizing, the hardships that are out there and doing our best to bring that forward.
Thank you. Council, anything else you'd like to say before we close the public hearing on this item? If not, then I declare the public hearing closed. The next item on our agenda, item 1B, is a resolution approving the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Ms. Mickelson, do we have any requests to speak on this item? No, thank you. Council, anything you'd like to say on this agenda item? If not, please, I see there's been a motion made by Mr. Luna, seconded by Mr. Freeman. Please vote. The vote is 6 ayes and Mr. Whittaker voting nay. So that motion passes. The next item on our agenda for this is item 2. That's items from citizens present. Ms. Mickelson, do we have any requests to speak on this item? No, that's fine. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Freeman and Mr. Luna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.